My dog blocked the door and destroyed everything I needed for work. 1 hour later, my boss called me sobbing. The last thing my best friend ever said to me was, "Your dog ate your homework? That's the best excuse you've got?" He was laughing when he said it. That small, tinny laugh I had heard 1,000 times. The one that lived somewhere between sarcasm and genuine delight. I told him Max had lost his mind. I told him I could not even get to the front door. He told me Henderson was already setting up the conference room. I told him to cover for me. He said, 15 minutes, tops. Jake Montgomery never made it out of that building. And the only reason I can tell you this story, the only reason I am sitting here 5 years later with a company, a purpose, and a destroyed briefcase I keep mounted on my office wall is because my 70-pound Husky decided at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning that I was not leaving that apartment. Not with my briefcase, not with my laptop bag, not with my badge, not at all. He saved my life. He did not know how to explain it to me, so he destroyed everything I needed in order to leave. That Tuesday changed everything. I had been at Morrison Creative Agency for 2 years when everything went wrong. 2 years of grinding. 2 years of late nights on campaigns nobody in middle management cared about. 2 years of cover sheets, brand guidelines, and PowerPoint decks that got neutered by committee before they ever reached a client. Before Morrison, I had been a teacher. High school English. 9 years of essays, lesson plans, restless teenagers, and telling other people they were allowed to become more than whatever they were in that moment. Then my marriage to Carolyn dissolved the way slow-motion disasters do, quietly and then all at once. After that, I decided I was finally going to do the thing I had always told myself I would do someday. Creative work. Real creative work. Morrison gave me that. Or at least I thought it did. And after 2 years, I had finally built something worth showing. 6 months of development had gone into a complete rebranding campaign for Meridian Pharmaceuticals, Morrison's biggest contract in a decade. My boss, Robert Henderson, was 53 years old, with salt and pepper hair and 15 years in the industry. He was the kind of man who communicated almost exclusively in controlled disappointment. The stakes had been made exhaustingly clear the previous afternoon. Make or break, Marcus, he had said, tapping his pen against my desk in that rhythmic way he had when he wanted you to feel the weight of something. The Meridian people expect to be impressed. Don't let me down. I had been rehearsing the presentation in my head since 4 in the morning. By 6:30, I was in my best suit. Charcoal Tom Ford, bought specifically for that day. My briefcase was packed. My laptop was charged. My badge was clipped to the strap. I had even bought a new pen, because apparently I am the kind of person who, under sufficient stress, fixates on something absurd like pen quality. Max was sitting in the kitchen watching me. His ice blue eyes followed every movement the way they always did when he knew I was leaving. He did that every morning. He watched me pack. He watched me put on my coat. He watched me until I scratched behind his ears, told him I would be back by dinner, and walked out the door. Except that Tuesday, he did not just watch. What, Max? The sound came from somewhere deep in his chest, a sound I had never heard him make in the 5 years I had owned him. It was low, guttural, real. Max was a 70-pound Siberian Husky I had adopted from a rescue shelter 2 months after my divorce was finalized. The shelter volunteer, a college-aged girl with paint on her sneakers, had warned me that Huskies were dramatic. Like toddlers in dog bodies, she had said, while Max leaned into her hand with an expression of obvious self-satisfaction. But once they bond with you, they're yours forever. He had been my constant for 2 years before I joined Morrison. Through the worst of the depression, through the career pivot, through the apartment in the bad part of town that I could not afford to leave until the agency money started coming in, he had slept pressed against my leg through every bad night. He let toddlers at the dog park climb on him and pull his ears. Once, he had spent 45 minutes sitting silently beside a stranger who was crying on a park bench because he sensed something was wrong. He had never once growled at me, not once in 5 years. But that Tuesday morning, he was standing directly in front of my bedroom door. Not beside it, not near it, in front of it. His teeth were showing. His ears were flat. That sound rolled out of him like something prehistoric. Max, what on earth? I reached for my briefcase. He lunged. He took the handle in his jaws and yanked, shaking his head with a violence I associated with rope toys. The leather tore clean off. $300. Gone in under 4 seconds. Are you out of your mind? He was not. I just did not know that yet. I grabbed my old laptop bag from the chair. Max exploded across the room, snatched it before I could blink, bolted into the bathroom, and began shaking it so hard I heard my laptop hit the tile floor with the specific crack of something that costs $1,200. I stood in my Tom Ford suit in the middle of my bedroom, listening to destruction happening in my bathroom, and I thought, this dog has lost his mind. My phone rang at 7:12 a.m. Jake. Jake Montgomery and I had been friends since the first week of college orientation, when we had both gotten hopelessly lost looking for the economics building and somehow ended up at a frat party neither of us wanted to attend. We spent 4 hours pretending to enjoy terrible beer and had been inseparable ever since. Same university, same MBA program, although Jake finished and I bailed for a teaching certificate. Years later, we ended up at Morrison the same week, survived the same training sessions, and covered for each other through every crisis, professional and personal. Jake was 29, which made him 7 years younger than me, and roughly 40 years younger in attitude. He wore bow ties unironically. He kept a collection of novelty socks. On 3 separate occasions, he had saved a client pitch by making a terrible pun at exactly the right moment. He called Max the office therapist, because Max had a gift for sitting quietly next to whoever was having the worst day. At Morrison Creative, that could have been literally anyone. Dude, where are you? There was an edge in his voice, the one that meant Henderson was already hovering. Clients are due at 8:45. Henderson's setting up the conference room. You know how he gets when, my dog just went insane. A pause. I'm not kidding, Jake. He destroyed my briefcase, cracked my laptop, and I can't even get out of my bedroom. Another pause. Then he laughed. Small and delighted. Exactly the way I remember it. Your dog ate your homework? That's the best excuse you've got? I'm serious. He's blocking the door. He will not let me leave. I've never seen him act like this in 5 years. 15 minutes, Jake said. Just get here. I'll stall Henderson. I told him I would try. I did not tell him about my work badge, which Max had quietly stolen from the kitchen counter while I was on the phone. He had disappeared into the bathroom with it, and now he was audibly destroying that too. I found the remains 5 minutes later. Cracked plastic. Teeth marks across my photo. The ruined badge was lying just outside the bathroom door, which Max had apparently decided was close enough to a peace offering. My phone showed 7:34. The presentation was in 86 minutes. I called Henderson. I told him I had food poisoning. The lie tasted like metal. His silence lasted 3 full seconds, which was somehow worse than anything he could have said. This is really bad timing, Marcus. I know. The Meridian people are already on their way. I know. Get better, he said tightly, and hung up without saying goodbye. I stood in my ruined apartment, shredded briefcase on the floor, cracked laptop in the bathroom, badge destroyed, laptop bag destroyed. The suit, somehow, still pristine. Then I looked at Max. He was sitting in the hallway now, directly in front of the front door. He was watching me with those pale eyes. He was no longer growling. He was just sitting there, waiting. He looked, I thought, like a soldier who had completed his assignment. At 8:47 a.m., I had changed out of the Tom Ford and was sitting on the edge of my bed in sweatpants, scrolling through architectural photography on my phone, trying to pretend I was not catastrophizing about my career. When Henderson called back, I almost did not answer. I was half convinced he was calling to fire me over voicemail, which was exactly the kind of passive-aggressive efficiency Henderson was capable of. But something caught in me. I cannot explain what it was. Some animal instinct I did not know I had made me pick up. Don't come in. His voice was wrong. The controlled disappointment was gone entirely, replaced by something I had never heard from Robert Henderson in 2 years. Pure, unstructured fear. Marcus, do not come near the building. The cold started in my stomach and radiated outward. What? What happened? Robert? A gas leak. His breath stuttered. Overnight construction. 3rd floor. They were installing new ventilation. Something. A connection. They said, a connection went wrong. The maintenance crew found he could not finish. Robert, what happened? Everyone who came to the morning meeting is dead. I sat down. I do not remember deciding to sit. My legs simply stopped working. They said it looked like they just fell asleep. His voice was barely a voice now. It sounded more like something leaking out around the edges of a grief he could not contain. Carbon monoxide. It started leaking around 6 in the morning, before anyone arrived, by the time symptoms hit during the meeting. Jake, I heard myself say. Silence. Jake? Jake, Sarah, Tom, Rebecca, the Meridian clients, 17 people total. Marcus, I was in my office making copies when it happened. Different ventilation system in that wing. I came down the hall and they were just... I tried to wake them, but my phone hit the floor. I do not remember dropping it. I looked at Max. He was still in the doorway, still watching, still perfectly, unnervingly still. He knew something I did not. The text came in waves after that. Sarah's girlfriend asked if I had heard from her, Tom's wife said he had not come home for lunch and asked what was happening at the office. Then came the message I still cannot read without my hands shaking. Marcus, please call me. The police just came to my house. They won't tell me anything except there was an accident. Is Jake okay? Please tell me my son is okay. Patricia, Jake's mom. A woman who had fed me Christmas dinner 3 times and always sent me home with leftovers because she said I looked like I did not eat enough. A woman who, once, when I was going through the worst of the divorce, called just to say she thought I was going to be okay, and that Jake talked about me like a brother. I could not call her back. I could not form words. I sat on the floor instead, my back against the bed, and Max walked over from the doorway and put his head on my knee. He did not demand anything. He was just present. Solid. Real. I put my hand on his head and felt the warmth of him, and I did not say anything for a very long time. Detective Maria Santos arrived at my apartment at 6:15 that evening. She was in her mid-40s, wearing a blazer that had clearly logged serious mileage. She had the kind of posture that suggested she had spent decades in rooms where composure was the only tool available. She introduced herself, said she had 15 years on the force and was now handling workplace fatality investigations, and asked if she could come in. Max assessed her from across the room and apparently decided she was acceptable. Then he went back to his bed. I need to walk through your morning, she said. Start from the beginning. So I told her everything. The briefcase, the laptop, the badge. Max blocking every exit with a ferocity I had never seen from him. The call to Henderson. The lie about food poisoning. She wrote all of it down in a notebook with pages bent at the corners, her expression carefully neutral. And the dog has never displayed this behavior before? She asked. Not in 5 years of ownership? Not once. I looked over at Max. Detective, he's the gentlest dog I've ever known. He lets 3-year-olds climb on him. She nodded slowly. Then she said the thing that changed the entire frame of the morning. Mr. Chen, the carbon monoxide leak began at approximately 5:47 a.m. Your dog's unusual behavior began at 6:47 a.m. She looked down at her notes. That is exactly 1 hour after the leak started. I did not answer. We checked your apartment for carbon monoxide detectors. You don't have any? I know. I need to install one. Even if you had, it likely would not have alarmed yet. The concentration in your apartment at that time was elevated, but not at levels that trigger most standard detectors. She paused. But elevated enough that an animal with 220 million olfactory receptors might detect something wrong. She let that sit for a moment. Dogs are documented in research as capable of detecting gas leaks before human technology does. There are cases on record of animals alerting to propane leaks, natural gas, and carbon monoxide in concentrations that register below standard equipment thresholds. She glanced at Max. What is unusual about your dog is not that he smelled it. It is what he did with that information. He knew I couldn't leave, I said. He knew that where you were going was worse than where you were. The conference room on the 3rd floor was directly above the faulty connection point. The forensic team determined that the concentration there was immediately lethal from approximately 8:30 a. onward. You were scheduled to be in that room at 9. Your dog prevented you from arriving. She stood to go, then turned back in the way people do when they have left the most important thing for last. The construction company is Hartwell & Sons. Their project manager approved a faulty connection in the ventilation retrofit. The overnight security guard, Marcus Webb, which I suspect is going to make your news reading experience strange for a few months, was supposed to conduct walkthrough inspections every 2 hours. Security footage shows him in the security office, watching a streaming service from 11 p.m. until 7 a.m. Both are facing charges. I just stared at her. The building management company, Prestige Property Group, had safety protocols that failed on multiple levels. This is going to be a long case. She looked at Max one more time. Install a carbon monoxide detector, Mr. Chen. Tonight, if you can. Then she left. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Max came and sat beside me. You knew, I told him. You smelled it through the vents. You knew if I left this apartment and walked into that building. He licked my hand once. Then he put his head on my knee. Jake Montgomery's funeral was on a Saturday in October. The sky was that particular bruised gray that feels personal. His LinkedIn photo ran on the news for 3 days. The one with the ridiculous bow tie. The one I had taken in the office break room after making him pose 17 different times until we got an angle he was happy with. I had forgotten I took it. I had forgotten about 1,000 small things until they started appearing in his obituary. 29 years old. Creative associate. Bachelor's degree in communications. Passionate about terrible puns, specialty coffee, and, according to people who apparently knew him better than I did, getting a dog someday. His apartment building had a no pets policy. He had never gotten the dog. I almost did not approach Patricia Montgomery after the graveside service. What do you say to a mother whose son is gone, especially when you were supposed to be in the same room? What do you say when the only variable between your outcome and his was a dog who refused to cooperate with your Tuesday morning? She found me first. She came through the crowd with her husband beside her, holding her elbow. She took my hand in both of hers with a grip stronger than I expected. I heard about your dog, she said. Her voice was scraped raw. Jake's girlfriend told me. About Max not letting you leave. Mrs. Montgomery, I don't. Her grip tightened. Don't apologize for being alive. I stopped breathing. Jake would have hated that, she said. He would have called it the most Marcus thing ever. A sound came out of her that was almost a laugh. Missing a catastrophe because of a crazy dog story. He would have called you the next morning and asked for every detail. She pulled me into a hug, and I could feel her shaking. You're alive, she whispered. That matters. Promise me you'll remember that it matters. I promise. Good. She pulled back and looked at me with eyes that had been crying for 5 days and somehow still managed to be direct. Now do something with it. The investigation took 3 months. David Hartwell, project manager for Hartwell and Sons, was charged with 17 counts of negligent homicide. He was convicted on 14, with 3 counts reduced on appeal. He received 11 years. Marcus Webb, the security guard, was charged with criminal negligence. He received 3 years. His attorney argued that he had no specific training that would have led him to connect the construction work to a ventilation hazard. The jury found that only partially persuasive. Prestige Property Group, the building management company, was named in a wrongful death lawsuit totaling $340 million. Their liability coverage covered only a fraction of it. They folded. The parent company restructured. Nobody I could find ever used that word, restructured, without it meaning that the people at the top left with their money. Morrison Creative never reopened. Henderson tried. He moved to a temporary office space in a different district and attempted to reassemble a staff around the handful of people who had not been in that conference room. But nobody wanted to go. The brand was synonymous with grief. Eventually, he sold the client list to a competitor and retired early. I could not go back to creative work either. Every time I opened a design brief, I saw Jake's face across the table. Every time I drafted a brand narrative, I heard Sarah Chen's laugh, the high-pitched one she had when something was genuinely funny rather than professionally required. Tom Reeves had kept photos of his kids, a boy and a girl, 7 and 9, on his desk in cheap plastic frames. I knew the 9-year-old was named Ellie because Tom mentioned her constantly. Ellie's soccer game, Ellie's science project, Ellie's opinion on dinosaurs, which was apparently very strong. I knew these people. I could not sit at a desk and make things for companies as if knowing them had been ordinary. But Patricia had told me to do something with it, and I had promised. I spent 2 weeks reading every paper I could find on canine olfactory detection before I found Dr. Rebecca Walsh. She was a veterinary behaviorist at UC Davis, in her mid-50s, with an office wall covered in framed photographs of dogs in various training vests. Her publication list included 3 papers specifically on canine detection of airborne chemical compounds. We connected over Zoom at 7:30 a.m. on a Wednesday because she had a 9 o'clock lecture, and I had been emailing her office at increasingly desperate intervals for 10 days. What your dog did isn't without precedent, she told me, direct in the way scientists tend to be when they are certain of their expertise. Gas leak detection in dogs has case studies going back 30 years. Dogs alerting owners to propane, to natural gas, to carbon monoxide in residential settings. I nodded, even though my throat was tight. What makes your case remarkable is not the detection, she continued. It is the communication. He didn't just alert me, I said. He prevented me from leaving. He problem-solved. He understood. And I want to be careful with that word, because we are talking about animal cognition, not human reasoning. But he understood that the danger was not in his immediate environment. It was in the direction you were heading. That sophisticated spatial threat mapping is remarkable. I leaned toward the screen. Could that be trained? Deliberately? She leaned forward too. In commercial settings? Absolutely. We already use dogs for accelerant detection in arson investigations, explosive detection, narcotics. Medical alert dogs can detect oncoming seizures, drops in blood sugar, and certain cancers through scent alone. Gas leak detection exists in specialized contexts, but it is not standard protocol in commercial building safety. And it should be. Yes, she said. It should be, because electronic detectors fail. Batteries die. Sensors malfunction. Dust accumulates on detection heads. A trained dog, properly integrated with a building's security team, is a redundant layer of protection that does not malfunction in the same ways. It bonds with the team. It learns the building. It develops pattern recognition for that specific environment. I sat with that for a moment. Then I asked, "Would you help me build a training protocol?" She was quiet for about 4 seconds. "Yes," she said, "I would." Canine Guard Solutions launched 7 months after the Morrison creative tragedy. I used most of my savings and a small business loan that a banker in Palo Alto approved with the specific energy of someone who thought I was probably going to fail, but found the pitch interesting enough to fund. Dr. Walsh designed the detection training program. I handled operations, client acquisition, and the part where I called building managers and tried to explain that they needed to consider augmenting their carbon monoxide protocols with trained dogs. The first dozen calls were not easy. We started with rescue dogs, specifically the dogs that rescue organizations described as difficult, high energy, stubborn, and prone to what shelter workers called dramatic behavior. It turned out those traits, the obsessive scent tracking, the refusal to disengage from a stimulus, the vocal insistence, were exactly what made exceptional detection animals. They were dogs like Max. Dogs who had something to say and no appropriate vocabulary for it until we gave them one. Our first client was a tech startup in San Jose. They were 3 years old, growing fast, and had recently moved into a 1970s-era commercial building with infrastructure their facilities manager described as charmingly retro. Our preliminary assessment described it as in need of serious attention. They hired us partly for genuine safety reasons, and partly, I suspect, because "we use safety dogs" was exactly the kind of thing their communications team wanted to put in a press release. 3 months after installation, at 4:23 a.m., on a Wednesday, a German Shepherd named Zeus began alerting at a wall panel in the second-floor mechanical room. The overnight security guard was 22 years old and 6 weeks on the job. At first, he described Zeus as malfunctioning, which was the word he used, as if the dog were a Roomba that had encountered a rug. But he had been trained in our protocol, so he called the emergency line. We contacted Pacific Gas and Electric. They dispatched a crew within the hour. The crew found a hairline fracture in a natural gas line inside the wall panel. It was not leaking yet, but there were stress fractures at a specific joint, the result of years of temperature cycling in an old building. Another few days of normal pressure variation, and it would have ruptured. The building had over 200 people working there daily. The mechanical room sat directly below the main HVAC intake. Zeus had prevented what a structural engineer interviewed later described as a probable catastrophe. After that, we could not train dogs fast enough. The company that was supposed to be a grief-driven experiment became, in the 2 years that followed, something I had no framework for. We expanded to Los Angeles, then Seattle, then Phoenix, then Denver. We hired trainers. We partnered with 3 major commercial real estate management firms, who began including canine detection contracts in their standard building safety protocols. We developed a certification program called Canine Guard Ready, so building managers could integrate trained dogs with their existing security infrastructure. Max came to every installation for the first 18 months. Officially, I introduced him as our quality control specialist. Unofficially, he was our proof of concept, our origin story, and our answer to the question every new client eventually asked. Why dogs? Why now? Why you? I would tell them the Tuesday story every time. By the end, I could say it without my voice shaking. Most of the time. Patricia Montgomery called me 2.5 years after the accident. "The settlement from the Prestige lawsuit is finalized," she said. "The families agreed to pool a portion of it into a foundation. We're calling it the Jake Montgomery Workplace Safety Foundation. Research grants, advocacy work, family support after workplace accidents. We want to lobby for updated carbon monoxide detection standards in commercial buildings, mandatory redundancy requirements, and stricter construction oversight." "That's exactly right," I said. "That's exactly what should exist. We'd like Canine Guard Solutions to partner with us. Pro bono placements in schools, community centers, and nonprofits that can't afford the contracts." I did not even pause. "Every dog we place through the foundation gets Jake's name on the vest," I said. "Every single one." She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had the quality of someone choosing words the way you choose which things to carry out of a burning building. "He would have loved this," she said. "He always wanted a dog. His building didn't allow them. He would have thought it was absurd and perfect that his death led to an army of safety dogs. It is absurd and perfect. That's very Jake." She laughed then. A real laugh, surprised out of her. I had never heard her laugh before, and I realized I had been waiting for it without knowing. Last month, we caught our 43rd gas leak before it became a catastrophe. Luna, a golden retriever, 18 months old, had once been described by her rescue coordinator as unplaceable due to excessive alerting behavior, which is rescue speak for she would not stop barking at things nobody else could detect. At 2:17 a.m., Luna alerted in a hospital maintenance corridor in Sacramento. The maintenance chief initially did not believe her. The electronic sensors showed nothing. In his incident report, he described Luna as insisting, which I thought was a good word for it. But the hospital's safety director had attended one of our training sessions the previous spring, and she believed Luna. She called the gas company. They found the leak, a faulty coupling in a natural gas supply line, serving the facility's backup generators. It was fixed before the morning shift. Before the patients, before the staff, Luna's handler sent me a photo afterward. She was wearing a navy blue vest, with the Canine Guard Solutions logo on one side and the Jake Montgomery Memorial Program on the other. She was sitting in a patch of morning sunlight in the maintenance corridor with the expression dogs have when they know they have done exactly what they were supposed to do. That photo is on my office wall now, next to the destroyed briefcase. The briefcase sits in a glass case to the left of my desk. The leather is cracked. The handle is completely gone. The teeth marks are visible across the surface like a signature. When clients see it, they ask. I tell them the story every time. All of it. The suit. The presentation. The growl I had never heard before. Jake laughing on the phone. The call at 8:47. 17 people? The detective who told me dogs had 220 million olfactory receptors, and Max had used all of them to save my life. They go quiet. Then they sign the contract. What I do not tell them, what I keep for myself, is this. I think about what that morning cost. I think about Jake, who wanted a dog and never got one. I think about Tom's daughter Ellie, who is 14 now and growing up without her father. I think about Sarah Chen's laugh. I think about Rebecca Foster, who had been at Morrison for 11 years and whose retirement plan had included a house on the coast of Maine. I think about all of it. And then I think about Luna in her vest. I think about Zeus alerting in the mechanical room. I think about the 43 times a trained dog refused to let danger go unannounced. At our first anniversary dinner for the company, Dr. Walsh told me I should stop calling my survival survivor's guilt. It's survivor's responsibility, she said. You didn't get to choose what happened. You do get to choose what you do next. Max is 9 now. He sleeps more. He moves slower. He does not come to every installation anymore. He has the gray around his muzzle that Huskies get when they are settling into the elder statesman phase of things. He still goes to the dog park. He still lets children pull his tail. He still whimpers if I raise my voice too much, which is honestly a useful feature. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up and find him sitting by the bedroom door. Not anxious, not alert, just sitting, watching. The same way he did that Tuesday morning, when he had already done what he needed to do and was simply waiting for me to understand. It's okay, I tell him. We're safe. He wags his tail once. Then he comes back to bed. I think about what Patricia told me to do. I think about Jake's laugh, small and tinny through a phone speaker, the last sound I ever heard from him. I think about what Jake would say if he could see all of this. The 43 leaks. The company. The vest with his name on it. The way I have taken to imagining him sometimes, as if he is still the friend who made me pose 17 times for a LinkedIn photo. He would say, "See, man? I told you you'd figure out what you were supposed to do. Just took a crazy dog to show you." I believe him. The briefcase stays on the wall. It is not only a symbol of disaster, it is not only a monument to grief, though it is that too, a little. On certain mornings, when the light is particular and I am having a day, it is proof that the worst morning of my life was also the morning that showed me who I was supposed to become. It is proof that sometimes the thing that looks like destruction is actually just a very smart dog doing the only thing he can think of, trying to tell you something you desperately need to hear. And it is proof that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone walk toward danger, even when they cannot understand why. Even when they are in a Tom Ford suit with a 9 a.m. presentation and everything to lose. Even when you have to destroy everything they need to make them stay.